So you're taking private music lessons, but something feels off. When's the right time to leave? Let's talk about that. Hi, I'm a music teacher, and this is my life. Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and welcome for those of you who might be new here. Now, as I said earlier, it's very possible that you or someone in your life, whether it's one of your kids or one of your friends, whoever, is taking private music lessons, but they're not sure if they want to continue, or at least with that teacher. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down 7 reasons why you might leave your music teacher. And some of these scenarios might be you're thinking about switching teachers, and some of these are reasons why you might want to stop taking music lessons altogether. But before I get started, as always, make sure that you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so that you never miss another video. So let's start with reason number 1, which is that their advice isn't helpful. Now, I'm giving all of you the benefit of the doubt here when I say that I'm hoping that you heard the way that they gave you advice or feedback and you've actually tried to implement it into how you're playing, and for whatever reason, it's just not working. A good teacher will either try to explain that same thing another way in the hope that maybe it helps you understand, or to provide an alternative if there is one. Now, there isn't always an alternative, so sometimes it's just going to take more effort or time on your end. But if there is an alternative, a good teacher will suggest one. So if their advice is not helpful and you're running into the same issue across multiple lessons, you might want to consider switching music teachers. Reason number 2 is that you don't want to apply their feedback. I know for some people out there, this might sound weird because you might think, well, why would you spend any time or money going to get music lessons if you're not going to apply your feedback? But years ago, and I've told this story on this channel before, but I once knew someone who took flute lessons from someone, and we actually took lessons from the same person. And way back in the day, she would tell me about the things that our music teacher had suggested to her. And she said, yeah, I just don't like her idea. So I'm just going to do it my way. If you don't want feedback that is going to help you be better, you're right. Then you shouldn't take music lessons because it's a waste of your time and money. And quite frankly, it's kind of a waste of that music teacher's time because this entire time that they're teaching your lessons, they're really hoping that the advice and feedback they give you is going to be constructive and helpful so that you improve. So they might start wondering, well, what am I doing wrong? But if they're doing a lot of things right and it's the student who just doesn't want to listen, well, then the fault is on the student. And if they're going to waste the teacher's time like that, then it's really not worth it, especially if the student thinks they know better, though a lot of the times they likely don't. The third reason why someone might want to switch music teachers, and sadly this might actually cause someone to want to quit music lessons altogether, is if the way that the teacher gives feedback is too harsh. Now, I'm a private lessons teacher myself, and I have been for nearly a decade now. And I absolutely believe that teachers need to be able to be honest with their students about what is going well and what needs to be improved and what can be worked on. But a good private music teacher is going to focus on these 3 things when thinking about how they teach and give feedback, which is the age, the level of maturity, and the amount of experience that their student has. If I'm teaching an adult beginner compared to if I'm teaching, let's say, a 12-year-old beginner, the way that I give feedback is going to be different because the adult is going to be more mature than a 12-year-old, even if they're both starting from the same place, a complete beginner. And a good teacher is going to be able to find the balance. Now, my music teacher in high school was probably less harsh or blunt, let's say, compared to my university private music professor. However, they were both able to be honest with me, and they would call me out when something wasn't working. But I was at the age and stage of high school where I was taking music lessons with the intention of preparing for university auditions, and that meant that I wanted someone who was an expert in my instrument to tell me how I could get better. So I was at that stage of maturity, even though I wasn't quite an adult, where I wanted that feedback. And she was able to find the balance between giving that feedback to me in a very constructive way, but not sugarcoating it either. So a good lessons teacher will take those three things into account. If they're being overly harsh, unfortunately, some people might leave the lesson and go, I never want to take music lessons again. But hopefully they will consider switching music teachers first. And before we move on, I just want to say that if you're the parent of someone who is talking about their private music teacher saying, they're picking on me, or I never want to take music lessons again, it's too hard, or this or that, talk to the music teacher, maybe ask if you can sit in on one of their lessons, or maybe ask if one of their lessons can be recorded, and then maybe the parent can watch that lesson back, because I know some kids will act very differently when their parents are in the room. And if the parents and the music school where you are both agree to the lesson being recorded, then it's fine, provided that the recording doesn't go anywhere. But maybe that will help the parent to better understand what's really going on in the music lessons. Some parents will also just sit right outside the door, wait for the lesson to be over. And so anything that they overhear, if that's a concern, definitely bring it up. But maybe the kid is saying something that's blown out of proportion. So do what's going to work best for you and your kids. But those are some options that you have available. The fourth reason why you might want to switch music teachers is when your skill level gets to be very close to that of your teacher. Now, I'm very honest as someone who teaches private music lessons that flute is my best instrument, but I'm still willing to teach private saxophone lessons, but only up to, let's say, a beginner, maybe an intermediate level. If I had a saxophone student and they were taking lessons with me as a beginner and they were then preparing for university level auditions, I'd be honest and say at this point, it would be really good for you to go find another saxophone teacher, because they're going to be able to teach you some of those advanced techniques, some of the more difficult or nuanced techniques that I, as someone who is primarily a flute player, just have not learned. So if it's time to switch teachers based on the level of difficulty, that's totally fair. And hopefully your teacher will understand that. There won't be any hard feelings, but that's a valid reason to want to find another private music lessons teacher so that they can challenge you musically and help improve your skills. Now, the last three reasons might be reasons why people quit music lessons altogether. There are ways around it, but these are some of the realities that people face. Reason number 5 is that you genuinely have no time to practice. Maybe you're really busy, but you've always wanted to learn a certain instrument, and so you want to sign up for music lessons. But then you're looking at your schedule, and it's really hard to set aside or budget 30 minutes every day to practice. If you're not able to do that because of work commitments or family commitments or other commitments, then the reality is it might not be worth taking music lessons. This also likely means that it's hard to carve out 30 minutes or an hour of your day for the actual lesson. And on top of that, if you're taking music lessons through a music school that doesn't drive to your home, then you also have to factor in commuting time. If your child's not going to have time to practice either because of school or sports or other activities, then again, maybe they just get to enjoy music at school. Or if you're an adult and you want to take music lessons, maybe during this really busy season of your life, you pause taking music lessons and just try doing a few things on your own, self-taught at home, until maybe a few years from that point. Maybe if you have really young kids, they start going to school, they become more independent, maybe then you could start taking music lessons. But don't feel the need to put that pressure on yourself if you just genuinely don't have time. And we all know that there are many different ways to be busy. There are lots of different life commitments. Maybe music lessons, out of all the things you want to do, just isn't the number 1 or 2 or 5 priority on that list. And that's okay. You can deprioritize and reprioritize at different stages of your life. Reason number 6 why people might leave their music teacher is if music lessons are no longer in the budget. Music lessons, whether they're 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, they're an expense. And I know for a lot of people, like I said earlier, a lot of people might have different priorities, and of all the financial priorities, music lessons might fall to the bottom of the list, especially if a family is going through financial hardship, a loss of a job, the loss of a loved one, and they all of a sudden have to pay for funeral arrangements, or you're saving up money to replace a car because of a sudden incident. Life happens. And as a teacher, I've had a family decide to take a year off of taking music lessons. And when I saw them later and they told me, hey, we just decided to take a break from lessons, I've never taken it personally. And I never asked for clarification if it was about money either, because that just seems really inappropriate. But I don't take it personally. I know that life happens. It could be a number of reasons as to why they stopped taking lessons. But I see the family because we go to the same church. There's no hard feelings. And I asked the daughter about if they were thinking of taking music lessons again in the future. They said, yeah, I think so. We're just going to take a break for this year. So that did reassure me a little bit, because I was hoping that the reason that they didn't leave was because they weren't enjoying music lessons or they didn't find it beneficial. But sometimes it's just not part of the budget. But like I said earlier, if you're someone who normally pays for 60-minute lessons, you could consider some cost-effective budgeting tactics. So are you going to limit it down to 30-minute lessons every week? Or if you are paying for 1 hour lesson every week, maybe instead you pay for a 1 hour lesson every 2 weeks instead. So there are other ways that you could save money, but sometimes you might just have to stop taking music lessons until it's affordable again. And the last reason on my list, number 7, and I don't know if I'm going to catch any heat for this, but it's if you don't want to. I'm really hoping I don't get parents upset at me in the comments. At the time of making this video, I am not a mother, I am not a parent, so I can't see it from that perspective as of this moment. But what I can tell you is that it's really frustrating as a teacher when a kid shows up to a lesson and I can tell they don't want to be there. There's nothing worse than seeing a kid show up, putting their instrument together, and the look on their face is just reading like, let's get this over with. It's the worst thing as a teacher, and I wanted to share this other story. It actually came from one of the students that I teach at my day job at my high school. So I have a student who was in my classroom, and he said, I'm really not looking forward to tomorrow. And the day that he said this was a Tuesday, and it was Wednesday. The next day I said, oh, what's tomorrow? Karate. I said, oh, what's wrong with karate? Is it that you don't like the person teaching it? Or do you just find it really difficult? And he's like, I just don't want to do it. But my mom's making me do it because I have to do something active. And I can completely understand where the parents are coming from in the sense that, yes, it is a good thing for kids and teens to be involved in healthy and sometimes active activities. Music is less active than sports, but I could understand that. And there's a ton of research that shows a lot of correlations between the neurocognitive functions of people who take music lessons and who learn musical instruments and those who don't. Both sides of the brain are being used at the same time. So you've got the analytical skills and the creative skills at play. If you are someone who's part of a band or a choir, then you're also working on collaborative skills, teamwork skills, responsibility, accountability, all important life skills outside of music. But it's so awful to see the look on this kid's face when he's like, I don't want to go to karate. For him, it's the one sport that he's okay doing out of all of the sports that his mom could choose to send him to, but he still doesn't want to be there. He's like, I'd rather be doing anything else. And so if you have a child who hates taking music lessons, maybe music isn't their thing. Maybe they have tried it for 5 to 6 months. That's about half a school year at least. And it's just not for them. They're not practicing at home. It just seems to be a lot of work to drive your kids, to pay for their lessons and everything, if they just don't want to be there. And it's also very possible that maybe they take music at school, and then later on in the high school journey, they realize, yeah, I want to get better at this. Maybe they will end up having goals for music in college and university, and at that point, they can choose to take private music lessons. When I was a kid, I took piano lessons, and piano was difficult, but I never actually went to my parents and said, I hate taking piano. I don't want to do this anymore. If I had, my parents likely would have taken me out of piano lessons. And at some point they did when I realized that piano wasn't going to be the instrument I go to university for, or the instrument that I enjoy playing the most. But if your kids don't want to go, I think that it's okay for them to stop, provided that that activity then gets replaced with maybe something else. And there are other ways, like I said before, to be involved in music. Maybe they get involved at school or through a community organization or through a church or other type of house of worship if you're religious. There are so many ways for music to be enjoyed by people in their life beyond taking private music lessons one-on-one with a teacher. Maybe there are group classes or other workshops as they come up, but you don't want a kid to hate music or hate lessons or any of those things. So if you really don't want to, I think that's fair. So those are 7 reasons why someone might leave their music teacher, whether they are switching or quitting altogether. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I appreciate any feedback, provided that it's constructive. Let's not get too feisty in the comments, hopefully. Let me know in the comments as well, what other kinds of videos would you like to see? Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell, give us a follow on Instagram, and as always, I will see you back on this channel with another brand new video.